The staffing model shows 3 physicians on for the overnight shift. Average census for 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. is 14 patients. 3 physicians for 14 patients. The math works. Then it's 2:30 a.m. You have 22 patients. 1 physician called in. A trauma comes through the door. Staffing models are built to manage averages. Emergency departments do not operate on averages. They operate on variance. And that distinction is where everything falls apart. Hi, I am Chet Shermer, and I have been at this for 25 years seeing patients in emergency departments of all sizes. We all know that money and finances are drivers of healthcare. That is understandable. However, we need to know how to make decisions better so that staffing does not suffer in arguably the most critical location in the entire hospital. Staffing models are constructed from historical volume data, average hourly arrival rates, average length of stay, average acuity by shift. The math produces a staffing recommendation that looks rational, but averages obscure variance. If your average 2 a.m. census is 14, but the standard deviation is plus or minus 8, then on one end of that distribution you have 6 patients, and on the other end you have 22. The model optimizes for the average and leaves the tails unprotected. Emergency volume is also not random. It clusters. Influenza season, sporting events, holiday weekends. Full moon or not, census clusters in ways that are partially predictable but often unplanned for at the operational level. The staffing model that works for the median day fails for the 90th percentile day. And the 90th percentile day is the one that produces adverse outcomes. The overnight problem is not just about numbers. It is about the biology of decision making. Decision accuracy decreases after midnight. Reaction time slows. Pattern recognition, the core cognitive skill of emergency medicine, degrades between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. This is circadian biology. It is not a personal failing. It affects everyone at every experience level. The overnight staffing model that assumes equivalent performance across all hours is built on a false premise. A physician who is cognitively operating at 85% of daytime capacity, managing a census spike, with a colleague who called in sick, is not just stressed. They are operating in a risk environment that is qualitatively different from the day shift. That distinction should be priced into the staffing model. It rarely is. Emergency nursing ratios are typically set for steady-state operations. 1 nurse to 4 patients is a common overnight target. Under surge conditions, census spikes, boarding, high acuity, that ratio breaks immediately. 1 nurse managing 6 patients, 2 of whom are admitted boarders requiring inpatient-level nursing documentation, is not managing 4 patients worth of cognitive load. They are managing 8 patients worth. The ratio on the whiteboard and the ratio in practice are different numbers. Overtime, voluntary holdover, and float pool nursing are the usual solutions. They work until they don't, until census has been high long enough that staff is fatigued, float pool is exhausted, and the administrative willingness to approve overtime expires. Many staffing models rely on on-call physicians as the surge buffer. A physician on call can be reached and on site within 15 to 30 minutes. On paper, this covers the gap. In practice, the gap that emerges at 2:30 a.m. is not a gap that waits 30 minutes. A patient whose physiologic status is deteriorating doesn't wait for backup to arrive. A trauma doesn't hold for the on-call physician to wake up, drive in, and orient themselves to the department. The on-call model is a financial solution masquerading as a clinical safety solution. It reduces the cost of full overnight staffing while creating the appearance of a contingency plan. The two are not equivalent. If you are in a position to influence staffing decisions, as a medical director, a department chief, a physician representative to administration, 3 things matter. First, demand variance data, not average data. Ask what the 90th percentile overnight census looks like. Insist that the staffing model be pressure tested against high variance scenarios. Second, ask about adverse events with staffing context. If your department tracks adverse events, near misses, delays in care, unexpected deteriorations, and that data is not being correlated with staffing ratios and census at time of event, something important is being missed. Third, make the safety argument explicitly, not the satisfaction argument, not the efficiency argument. The safety argument. The relationship between unsafe staffing ratios and patient harm is documented in the literature. Cite it. 3 things to carry from this brief. First, articulate staffing risk in staffing discussions using variance data, not averages. The mean is not the story. The tail is the story. Second, document adverse events with staffing context. Note the census, the physician count, the nursing ratio at the time. That contextual data is what makes the safety argument credible. Third, remember that the argument that changes decisions is safety data, not efficiency data. Administrators can absorb an efficiency argument. They cannot dismiss a documented safety argument. This is Global MedOps Command Clinical Brief Series. The staffing model that looks good in a spreadsheet is the model you inherited. The model that actually protects patients at 0230 is the model worth fighting for. Next brief, how emergency physicians burn out without noticing. Stay prepared. Stay educated. Out.